morning, and thank you for joining us on our trade newsletter for Wednesday. Um, it's it's pretty explosive today. It's some big changes happening, and let's go through the global trade flashpoints. Let's see what's happening in global trade, what we're seeing, real up-to-date news, and let's keep this going and let's get straight into the newsletter. Again, we've been talking all week about origins, about geopolitical, and all these kind of areas, and wow, they're really starting to take shape. We're seeing lots of changes within the US, India, EU, UK. So let's get ahead and let's see what's happening. What's changed? So US weaponizing tariffs. You know, the new buzz thing now is that anybody dealing with Iran will pay extra charges. Again, extra duty charges. Again, I'll go into that in a bit more detail. India reforming. They're doing a massive, big global push in their export competitiveness. Again, ahead of their budget. The UK is realigning with the EU. Again, the challenges within that, and the challenges that what they're saying is what a lot of UK customers are facing. The challenges there, paperwork and everything else. You know, it's not one of my, if I'm being honest, people know my feelings on this. I think you get your paperwork right, it doesn't really matter what you do. And I think that's the key. So again, it's just understanding that and understanding, yes, paperwork has a great deal, but it's a great excuse as well. You know, don't let anybody kid you. It's an excuse. Yes, it's challenging, but there's laziness. There's a real challenge for UK exporter to do everything he can do to get his goods to the customer in EU, and EU to me are just lazy. And that's the problem, where you get it on the reverse, the UK are under pressure to receive goods, so we make all alignments. So again, it's okay aligning things, but what difference does it make? So again, Parliament look at the overall structure. Nobody understands customs. So why try and set something up when you don't understand? You hear all the buzzwords about, well, it's paperwork, it's documentation, but what is it? Look at the data. The data's not telling us that trade's changing. Trade's down, but it's down everywhere around the world because it's competitive, but services are going through the roof. So again, let's not get too wrapped up in all this. I mean, too many people get on the bandwagon. You know, you'll always trade. You know, is it a good idea getting more into bed with the EU? You know, that's not for us to decide, but certainly not for certain politicians to decide when they don't really understand the market. So again, let's see what happens there. EU, India rewriting supply chains, FTAs redirect sourcing flow and create new rules within origin requirements. We talk a lot about origin. If you watched the earlier one, if you not had a chance to watch, I talked about how origin have been in wars for many centuries and how now data technology can really start to establish sourcing, understanding where that source is coming from, data. You know, these are the problems this when AI and other tools come into place. You know, it can certainly find out a lot more quick detail. So there's not that opportunity to hide things. What you could hide probably in the past, not saying anybody's hiding anything, but certainly people do use the rules to their advantage. But again, there's challenges there. You know, the big thing coming out, US tariff shock, 25% tariff on countries trading with Iran. Energy products, petroleum, food commodities, industrial chemicals, manufacturing, components. The binary choice exports and governments now face that decision to maintain trade relationships with Iran, put my teeth in again, and absorb a 25% cost increase. You probably are aware I don't read slides, that's my difficulty, it's all in my head. So you'll have to bear with me because I tend to go 2-4 slides ahead, but everything's on here. China has already signaled measures to retaliate on that, escalating a broader trade compensation. It's a crazy situation we're in now. It really is. We've just created such a geopolitics and everything around there. And how do you get through that maze? We can only do what we can do, but hopefully we can stay in the right place and try and avoid a lot of the conflicts that's going to come. Unfortunately, that's happening. Whether you agree, disagree, you know, we're not here to do that. This is not a channel to be on one side or the other. We're here to support the exporters and importers. That's what we're here for. We're not getting into politics. I have my own feelings. I tell you how it is. I think there's a lot of things that are put in here to create disruption. We certainly won't be involved in that. And when we get the trade intelligence hub, you're going to be ahead of the game. You're going to be way ahead of the supply chain. You'll be able to, once that trade hub is up and running, again, I'm just testing it, making sure it's working, trust me, you'll be ahead of the game. You'll know exactly how to run your supply chain sustainability. You'll know your CBAM. You know your commodity codes. You know your data driven. It's all there. Everything will revolve. Your logistics, you'll be able to look at live logistics data, see what's happening with imports. You know, how much is that going to cost you? How is that being delayed? Why is it not coming to where it should be coming? Live data on air freight, all these things that you will start to be able to control in the hub. So again, it gives you them tools to really start to escalate your exports, not because government is supporting you, because we're going to find things as SMEs to support SMEs and get you, rather than being hit with taxes and everything else, we're going to support you and get you through all these mazes and really expand our exports in the UK and also imports. Obviously, if you're an importer, absolutely, we'll support you. What exporters face if you trade through key transit hubs again. So what that means is what a lot of companies do is they interchange, so they trade between hubs. So we call it cross trade. So they may have suppliers or they may have manufacturing in China, India, and other countries. And rather than shipping it to the UK and servicing the customers, they may use different hubs. That's scrutinised. You're going to have to check that. Payment banking, banks are under enormous pressure now to understand where your payments are being going, and obviously with sanctions and everything else going around, you're going to have to be really on top of that. Again, speak to your local bank. If you're banking with Santander, Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC, talk to the people who can support you on that. Make sure you're fully in control of your banking and payments and everything else. It's very important. If you're doing letters of credit, again, make sure a letter of credit is a form of a payment where there's a bit of security there for the exporter. But again, make sure you're covering all the angles on your paperwork. You're doing a credit. And there's some letters of credit companies out there. You don't have to use a bank. There are other people out there who we can put you in contact as we start this drive on our YouTube channel. Origin routing audits, again, checking that. What's the trade risk? It's come financial risk. So again, do you really want to be trading lots and lots of trade? You know, a million, £2, £3 million worth of trade, and suddenly it gets held up through sanctions or it gets held up because there's questions or governments don't release the money or banks, sorry, don't release the money. You know, be careful. You know, it's a very volatile market. So just make sure you're ahead of what's going on. Again, speak to your banks. They will know what's going on. They will be ahead of the game and they'll be able to support you. It's very important. UK trade policy is obviously shifting now towards the EU anti-dumping. So what's anti-dumping? Anti-dumping is a practice where it allows goods to be protected coming into the UK. So it stops a flood of goods coming in. So there's an argument that there's lots of goods entering the UK where it has an effect on manufacturing and competitiveness for a UK company. Maybe they should have brought this in the 80s and 90s and won't be talking about this, but you know, we can't do that. And there's some good organisations out there who can support you in anti-dumping. Anti-dumping is a support. Anti-coercion tools, joint mechanisms to counter economic threats from third countries, supply chain security, strategic trade rules. That's what we're seeing. The implications are clear. UK exports should prepare for regularity convergence and not divergence. The compliance burden will increase. So we're predictable. So we have that predictability for companies trading across EU, UK borders. I'm going to do a little talking on YouTube about a lot of subjects like transfer pricing, all these, just so you get an understanding of what it all means. Because actually, you might be doing something where you could actually trade a lot better and a lot more competitive, and just understanding how you can do cross trade in other areas. You know, do you need to bring it to the UK then to ship it out? Could you have a bonded warehouse in the UK, bring it in, ship it out? So lots of things we'll talk about in the coming days on the YouTube channel. Again, Brexit reality check in with zero types. Paperwork, everybody talks, it's paperwork, documentation. There's a pure laziness, you know, let's be honest. If you're doing the correct paperwork, you freight forwarders, if you're doing the correct paperwork, goods will move. Are you seeing freight forwarders struggling with moving transport? No, maybe the prices have gone up, but the good transport companies out there, the big supply chains, the DHLs, the Davis Turner, the Europa, the Samarco, you know, these are moving hundreds or thousands of goods every week. It's moving. Yes, it costs you a bit more, but they've got systems in place. They have agents in the countries that it should be in. So you shouldn't have these compliance issues. The trouble is you're working with either a freight forwarder who's a third party who's passing it on, passing it on, passing it on. And that's where the paperwork gets a bit unstuck because it's not being passed down. That's not to say you can't use a freight forwarder because some very good freight forwarders out there. But again, sit down with them and talk to them about your compliance, about your challenges within customs. Maybe do the customs yourself. Maybe use a broker to do your customs. Take that bit of pressure off you. And I've put a video on X Works. Come on, X Works. We're talking about Brexit reality check. Why the hell are you doing X Works? Let's just play the cards. On one hand, everybody's moaning about things, and then on the second hand, they're not then following the instructions and they're using X Works. How do you know exactly what's been put on that documentation, on that declaration? You have no idea. Are you the exporter of record? Who's the exporter of record? What happens if you have a customer's traceability that them goods have turned up somewhere where they shouldn't have turned up, but you've sold them to? Yeah, who? Exactly. So you got to have that traceability. That's your responsibility. You get this right, you're fine. Just keep documented paperwork for compliance. The winners in UK and EU trade deals and cheapest suppliers are the best documented suppliers, the people who know how to do the paperwork. You know, it's like the drum, innit? It's like the drum playing. It's making sure you understand. And I keep going on and on about your paperwork. It's not hard. Let's not overcomplicate things, but it's very important that your importer aligns with you what you're trying to achieve. If he's not playing ball with you, or he's making it complex, how the hell are you going to get goods through? It's not the freight forwarder or not the logistics company. It's normally to do with the end product who's receiving the goods. Either they haven't paid the VAT or the duty, or something's happened, and then the goods end up being returned back to you. Or in the worst case, actually, not damaged, but destroyed and things like that, which costs you a lot of money. So again, just don't be fined about anything to do with all these nonsense what you hear. You can trade, you just got to understand how to trade your paperwork, your Incoterms, all these key things. Learn it, understand it. You'll be ahead of the game. India is rewriting the rules. Lower import duties, ties reduction on critical imports to reduce manufacturing costs and improve its export competitiveness. Where we heard this before. Better export incentives and hence duty drawbacks. So, I harped on for this for years, and nobody listened as usual because nobody wants to listen. But why on earth did the UK not invest money in exporters of the UK and invested heavily in them so they could do duty drawback on goods being delivered into the EU? That means everything stays in the UK, manufacturing stays here, employment stays here, taxes stay. Oh no, we encourage everybody to move abroad in Holland and everywhere else. What's the logic in that? And there you are, you've got India now doing a drawback scheme. Read the history. 1990s, Germany had a clear plan what they wanted to achieve. They wanted to be in the 80s, 90s, they wanted to be a big exporter. What did they do? They forced everything within the German market. You was then incentivized then to and due to drawbacks to keep everything within Germany. What happens then? You build your manufacturing process. We can do it here in the UK. It's just that people don't understand it. So if people don't understand it, policy makers will just talk all day about policies, and the policy people will talk policy. But at the end of the day, it's staring at you in the face. Give the money back to the exporters. If it's costing them 5% to export the goods, why then force them to go and move the manufacturing plant somewhere else? Why don't you then incentivize them? That's a lot cheaper than losing companies, manufacturing, and employment. It makes no sense to me, never has, and I've argued this point, but nobody listens, so I kind of harp on myself. Reform, CES reform, streamline regulations, operational flexibility in specific economic zones, SEZ. Again, why we're not doing that? We came up with this great scheme, ports, free ports. Does anybody understand a free port? I bet you bottom dollar you don't. Even I get confused with it. What does it actually do? We've got 11 free ports. Where's the benefit at the moment? Where's the benefit to people surrounding in that area? So again, this is so having all these incentives, but does anybody actually understand what they do so they can explain it to the actual SME exporter or importer and support them? It's just not there, and this is why this channel will support you. Ask the questions, we'll support you, and we'll get you moving your goods. Faster manufacturing to export, simplified approvals, logistics infrastructure to accelerate time production. It's there for global players. India is positioning itself. Why are we not doing this? It's beyond me because we're too busy, everywhere else. Let's concentrate on what we need to achieve. We can't control geopolitical things, what are happening around them. We can't control that, but we can control what happens in the UK. In the EU trade annex, they're trying to put more now a deal together where they control tariffs, sourcing, change of origin, open huge markets again. These are the key topics. Cut tariffs, elimination of significant reduction of duties on industrial goods and textiles, chemicals, shifting sourcing from China. So you'll move that shift. Who's the benefit? India. It doesn't need a brain surgeon to understand this. Change of rules, new origin thresholds, cumulation. What does cumulation mean? It means that if there's a trade deal between two countries under cumulation, you're allowed to use accumulation from this FTA country that's supplying you to add on to your product when you're changing it to an origin. So the origin then becomes an Indian origin, even though a lot of it might have come from China, because they can use accumulation within a trade deal. So not China, within the EU. Lots of things you can do. Made in the EU. There's lots of things you can do. Access to 1.4 Indian consumers, 450 EU consumers under preferential terms. Come on, we're missing a golden opportunity and nobody sees it. And you'll go to all these events, sit down and listen to somebody harping on, we can do this and do that and do this. Well, somebody actually tell me what actually happens with all these things, because I don't see it. UK companies trading with India will feel this immediately. Again, let's get ahead of this. We have to be really on top of this, because we're going to have a huge disadvantage. And then forget Brexit, forget EU aligning with the EU and all this nonsense, because we're going to be way out of the game. And did the EU really care about the UK? I don't think so. Let's be honest. They've been without us for so many years. They've put so many stumbling blocks in front of us. Why would they then welcome us with open arms? It makes no sense. So we have to accept that. Sometimes you have to move on, whether you like it or not. You have to move on. What this means, world is not deglobalizing; it's reglobalizing. So what it's doing, it's rejigging. It's rejigging its political statements in certain countries. Russia have been very clever with this and been aligning itself outside of the West, because obviously with sanctions and everything else. Again, whether you agree with things, we're not here for politics, but they've certainly strategically made an impact what they're doing. So again, you only hear the news you want to hear. And it's that old thing of that, on social and everything, on the news and everything else, you only hear what you want to hear. Actually, if you do the studying, and this is what we're doing with our data, we're studying the markets, we're seeing what's happening. We're not seeing a lot of the things that is being said on the news and everything else. So this is why we need to be ahead of the game. Why do we exist? We're here to support you. We're here, and the Trade Hub will support that. Yes, I know I keep harping on about the Trade Hub. Trust me, when it's live, I've been testing it again. The builder's working, and we'll have in there an export builder. So if you're new to exporting or you haven't exported and you're not sure how to check your exports, the builder will actually do the whole process for you from start to finish, and it will give you a landing cost. It'll give you all your documents you need. It will do everything for you. That will allow you to do what you should be doing. What's the biggest drawback? Documentation. What's the other? Customs. It's in the Trade Hub. It will be in there. It's not easy, when you're designing these things. And AI makes a huge difference because it allows you to do things a lot quicker. But again, there's challenges within there. So we're seeing all these challenges, global, we're seeing a global challenge. We need to be ahead of this, and this is why the channel's there. It's there to support you and give you ideas, and not to put you off. We're not here in any sense to say you can't do anything. You can do whatever you need to do, and we'll support you on that, as long as it's doing your full compliance. You do your compliance correct, you'll be absolutely fine. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Again, don't get too wrapped up. These are things that are coming. Trust me, that there's countries that are way ahead of the UK. We have no thought process, and we need to get that thought process in place. If we don't put that in place, we're going to be left behind. And this number 5 global player in the world has a golden opportunity. We need to grab that. We need to get policymakers, people together to actually understand what all this means and how we can avoid a lot of the messes that we could get ourselves in. So again, thanks for listening again. Any feedback, please let us know. Hope you're enjoying the YouTube channel. We're certainly getting a lot of traction, which is great. And that was the whole point of it. We wanted to leave it. People say, why didn't you do this 2 years ago? Because I wasn't ready to do it 2 years ago. I'm busy training. I'm a trainer. I'm busy traveling the world doing training. I've been busy building up my level 4 diploma, writing a program. I've been building the AI. So I've been doing lots of things, and now's the time I'm ready to unleash all this information to you that will really support you in your journey. So thanks for listening. Have a good day, everybody, and hopefully we'll speak later. And and good luck. And like I said, don't get too wrapped up tomorrow. Let's see what tomorrow brings.